The lights, the camera, the action. But is any of it setting anyone up for success? I don't know about that. Let's talk about it. Hey guys, what's up? It's Imurgency and welcome back to my channel. Today we are back with another video. And if you could tell by the title, we're back talking about Hollywood. But specifically today we're talking about child stars, child actors, young entertainers, and how oftentimes they're commodified by their studios, by Hollywood, and are not set up for success before, during, and after their time as a child star. And it actually seems that the way the whole system has been ran is actually setting up these young actors for failure. Now, this topic actually piqued my interest fairly recently with the release of Jennette McCurdy, you know, Sam from iCarly's new book, I'm Glad My Mom Died, in which she talks about her experience in the industry as a child actor and how oftentimes child stardom actually can trap you physically, mentally, socially, professionally, all of that. And I wanted to take a closer look into that. And I wanted to take a look at how that actually happens and if there is any opportunity for change. But before we do that, if you are new to the channel and like all things pop culture, TV, and or fashion, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we cover all of that on Imurgency. Also, while you're at it, make sure to follow me on all my social medias at Imurgency. That's on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, the whole nine. And if you want to hang out with me in a more close-knit community, you can click the link in my description to join the community Discord server because I like to hang out with y'all, and the community there is so amazing. And one more thing, and if you haven't already, make sure to leave a like on this video because it helps out so much with the algorithm. I'll actually give you a second to do that while I put back on these glasses and try and serve some face. Did you like the video? Cool. But let's talk about how these young entertainers are being set up for failure. I feel like everyone has had that phase as a kid where they wanted to be like a star on one of these shows, specifically like on Nick and Disney. Like I remember those ads on Radio Disney that were like, hey, do you want to be on the Disney Channel? Come to this random place to audition. I think the ad that I remember, they're either advertising for Shake It Up or Austin and Ally. And for some reason, I really wanted to be on one of those shows. Oh, and Ant Farm. And for Ant Farm. I remember Ant Farm too, because I was like, I want to be China Ant's best friend. Ooh. That's the bullet, I guess. But a lot of these stars, like the name implies, are children. They get started very young. In the case of Jennette McCurdy, she started acting at 8 years old. And she talked about how the whole casting process as a child is just so strange. Another child actor, Allison Stoner, also touches on this, but they both mention how strange it is for a young child to just be in a vulnerable position, giving these emotionally charged and almost traumatizing performances for the judgment and approval of a bunch of random strangers. And I never really thought about it like that. And when you put it in that way, it does sound a lot more messed up, especially when you realize that a lot of these child actors are going to these different casting calls. So they're giving a similarly emotionally charged performance back to back over and over again without any real guidance or knowledge of how to like calm themselves down or deal with that because, you know, they're children. That sort of brings me to the first portion of how child actors are set up for failure. And that starts with being set up socially. First and foremost, a lot of child actors are overworked, especially if you're getting a more prominent role. Usually young entertainers are not just doing one thing. They're either on set, going to another casting call, doing some promo for something, actually going to school and getting an education in whatever means that is, rehearsing their lines, or just getting to place. And you see how none of those things mentioned actually have anything to do with being a child, you know, doing like kid things, like socializing with people your own age, learning how to be an individual, like learning how to be yourself. And I just assume that must be hard, like being a kid and not being able to be a kid, if that makes sense. Like just the concept of like not knowing who you are as a person while also portraying and trying to become all of these different people for the characters that you're playing must do something to the mind, because I know that I would be tripped up by that. But that doesn't even get to the main part of it. In many cases, child actors are the main provider for their family. Like in Jennette's book, she talks about how she's providing for her entire family. And that just creates a weird dynamic because then there's this social pressure for you to keep performing as a child. Again, I must emphasize, as a child, to always be performing your best and to always be on so that you're not messing it up for your entire family, you know? And I know in my last video, a lot of people were saying how there wasn't a lot of sympathy. And I feel like the situation is a little different from what I was talking about in my last video about like the pay of Hollywood and like how that relates to like Sydney Sweeney's situation. I feel like in this case with Jennette McCurdy, since she was was a child, this dynamic is very different. Because not only was Jennette a child when this all started, but her family also did not come from money, like from whatever means. And that constant need to perform and overachieve creates this overwhelming pressure, and oftentimes due to that pressure and access from being in that world makes it very easy to slip into substance use to cope. And in Jennette's case, that environment was very much so normalized. In her book, there's a section where she talks about a interaction that she has with Dan Schneider, which we won't even really get into him in this video. That's a whole different can of worms to open up. But Dan Schneider is trying to convince Jennette McCurdy, who was underage at the time, to drink alcohol, and tries justifying his pressuring of an underage girl to drink with saying that the Victorious cast always allegedly parties and drinks anyway, so like, why doesn't she? Mind you, the cast of Victorious was also underage drinking at that time. Now you may be thinking, Rumi, at that time they were teenagers, and what teenagers weren't underage drinking? For one, a lot of them. But two, I don't think that most teens were partying and consuming these substances to the extent and as frequently as the people in the Hollywood lifestyle, specifically young entertainers, would. Like, these teens were blacking out and showing up to work hungover. Yeah, that's a little different than going out and partying hard on a weekend. And this isn't even like hush-hush information. Like Avin Jogia, you know, Beck from Victorious, the show that we were just talking about, he made a whole TikTok about it. Like, homeboy can barely remember the show that he was on for years because he'd go out and party so much. And mind you, again, at this time, he's still not of legal age to drink. And then you have people like Drew Barrymore who really were raised in this whole environment of growing up too fast and being introduced to things like these substances and this whole party Hollywood lifestyle way before she should have. And that led her to an early life of addiction and other issues. So it's safe to say that socially, these environments are not conducive to the success of any child, but specifically a child actor. Because how can you be expected to give your best work when you're constantly under the stress of overperforming for your family, also dealing with family that may not be having the best intentions for you, and then this whole social party culture and pressure from your peers that are also acting along with you and going along with the same thing. And all of that is bad in and of itself, but we haven't even gotten to the second way that these actors are set up for failure, and that is being set up publicly. So not only do these environments give these young entertainers unlimited access to a sense of fame, freedom, and money, but then alongside that, there's little support given to these children and to the parents of these children of how to act in the public eye and how to really protect them from the public, from the media, and from people that just don't have their best interests at heart, so that they're able to healthily develop and move on to the next stage post child stardom. I feel like this part isn't talked about enough because not only are the children unprepared for this level of publicity, but the parents also are not. I don't think any parent is really prepared for the level of visibility and attention. So it's really hard for these parents to be a parent, be a good parent, when there isn't really any training, protocol, or support for them to actually do that and manage that well. I feel like it's not until very, very, very recently that parents have started to sort of catch on and be better about when their children are so famous. Like in this case, I'm thinking about Charlie and Dixie D'Amelio's parents and how in the beginning they were super protective over Charlie and Dixie and what they could and couldn't do and show online. But then again, you do have people like Monty Lopez nowadays, which make things a little interesting. But regardless, it's a sticky situation. And in the sphere of young entertainers, publicly they're put into this box, especially if they are on Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, anything where they're traditionally seen as innocent, pure, just really wholesome vibes. It's really hard for them to break out of that. Especially, God forbid, that child actor is a girl, because then that experience is just 10, 20 times more difficult, because the media definitely does treat young male entertainers that choose to grow up and develop differently than young female entertainers. And actually, my friend Madison Brown made a really great video on like the good girl gone bad trope pipeline over on her channel, so you should definitely go check that out. But it makes it really, really hard to grow as a person, as a young entertainer, if you're kept in this box, and if you stray out of it by any means, you're publicly ridiculed and called all these different names just for expressing yourself the way that anyone normally would. Like, I feel like the media is specifically so critical and nasty towards the growth and development of these young entertainers, to the point where you can actually see it impacting their mental health. Like, the latest examples that I can think of now are with Chloe Bailey and with Olivia Rodrigo. Like, the way that they're policing these two women who are trying to break out and discover who they are as artists and just adults is just so strange. Like, the criticism that they get for just discovering themselves is disgusting. And during this whole era of young entertainers growing and getting this media backlash, This also happens to be when we typically see the start of these public breakdowns and where things seem to start going downhill. I think the classics, Amanda Bynes, Lindsay Lohan, Shia LaBeouf, Demi Lovato, even Miley Cyrus. And it doesn't really seem like anyone's trying to help them or be on their side. It's more of just this antagonistic push, which creates this vicious circle of a downward spiral. And I don't know, this correlation between negative media attention for the growth and development of these young actors with their negative spirals seems to be a coincidence. I don't know. Their timing seems to be a little too uncanny, but I don't know. It might be a coincidence. It might be. It could just be a random timing where it happens so similarly for so many different actors and entertainers. But you know, it's just a coincidence and not anything systemic or anything like that. But you know, and finally, the last way that these actors are set up for failure is professionally. Like, I feel like unless you are a special case and or have an amazing team behind you and promoting you, it is very difficult to book huge gigs after you age out of Disney and Nick. And that's because of something we were sort of talking about before, where you are kind of boxed in to this whole role of being like a child star and just being super innocent, or just generally being typecast as being like a Disney or Nick kid. So booking more serious roles is said to be more of a challenge. It takes longer because really once they're known to be a Disney or Nick kid, that's all they're seen as for a while. So again, unless they have the money, resources, the team for like a full rebrand, they're essentially starting from scratch. And Alison Stoner touches on this in an article that she wrote about like her being a child star. It's just really difficult if you don't have the resources. Because there'll always be like the Ariana Grandes, the Olivia Rodrigos, who seem to get past and really push through the initial bump of transition between child star and big entertainer. And in the acting space, you have people like Leonardo DiCaprio and Emma Stone. But in those cases, a lot of times they have a lot of money backing them to make that transition and rebrand. And even when gigs are difficult to book, it's also difficult to transition into other fields and other opportunities because of the lack of transferable skills that you just have as a child actor and having that be your main bread and butter for so long. Like, let's circle back to Jennette McCurdy for a second. In her book, she says, "I never went to college and have no real life skills, so even if I wanted to get a profession outside of the entertainment industry, I'm years away from that being a realistic option." So essentially her years of being a child star and really focusing on the entertainment industry are kind of all for naught because she set back so many years because she just doesn't have the skills or qualifications that someone else her age would. So in that case, you may be thinking, okay, if you're having trouble getting jobs in acting and outside of your profession, why not just do something inside the entertainment industry that doesn't have to do with those things? Well, yes, but also no. Because again, like before, oftentimes these actors don't really have experience outside of acting unless they're able to get like directing or production credits for like directing an episode. Like think Euphoria, both Hunter Schafer and Zendaya were able to get directing credits on like those special episodes and in episodes throughout the seasons of Euphoria. But they're not children, but that helps with their visibility. In the case of shows on Nick and Disney, where there are often more young talent, it's harder for them to get those directing and production credits. In Jennette's case, she actually says that on Sam and Cat, she was asking for the ability to direct one of the episodes to get those directing credits so that she could actually have some upwards mobility in the entertainment space outside of acting, but they literally do not allow her to direct because someone on the team says that they'll like quit if she chooses to direct, and they couldn't afford to lose that talent at the time. So she doesn't get that experience as a child and then spends so much time afterwards eventually getting those directing credits, but for smaller scale projects. And that just kind of sucks because then these actors are kind of like left on their own to kind of figure out their own thing after years and years of hard work, sacrificing their mental and physical health in the same industry that they're trying to develop and grow in. So if you aren't a lucky case and weren't able to get a lot of help when you were young, or have an amazing team behind you to help you make that transition, you're oftentimes just discarded. And that's the main issue here. A lot of these child actors are just commodities in the eyes of Hollywood and with the different studios that they work for. They're just different products that can be put in and put out without really any regard for their mental health, for their professional growth or well-being after they become stars, or any real damage control or mitigation for while they are a star. Dealing with fame for the first time, having to navigate those relationships and how to avoid and how to manage their mental health so they don't go down that negative spiral that we see so many other child stars take. Now the question is there any solution to this? Is there any one fix? Or is the general public just okay with the churn and burn of child actors? Personally, I think there needs to be some change in the industry to help protect these child actors. Just some training or informed people in place to help guide them through the process so they still can do what they need to do without falling for the typical pitfalls that a lot of other childhood actors have in the past. I keep referencing back to her because she really just did hit the nail on the head. But Alison Stoner recommended in her article that there needs to be some mental health professional or some kind of counselor to help the children manage their feelings and emotions and just the pressure of it all. And I agree, but I'd also extend that support further to help them develop professionally and make sure that they don't get stuck. Or also given the tools to develop professionally to branch out into other careers in entertainment if they see fit. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about all of this? Do you think that the industry needs to change? If so, how? I want to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments below. Once again, thank you so much for watching this video. If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button, follow me on my socials at Imurgency, and to leave a like on this video because it helps out so much. Other than that, y'all, thanks so much again. I've been Imurgency, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.